Good evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Silverstein, the artistic director and co-founder of the festival. We are so excited to bring you our first edition of Curating the Athena Film Festival. And with me are Kory Louko, who is a programmer, former intern, operations assistant, a person who does pretty much everything, and Faridah Gbadamosi, who is our programmer. And in spirit, Opal Hope Bennett is with us. She also helped program the shorts program, and we love her and miss her. Okay, so firstly, a thank you to all the sponsors who you just saw play before this. We wouldn't have a festival without them. And big shout out to Regina Scully and the Artemis Rising Foundation for her continued support, and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation for their premier level support. Okay, so we are going to talk about how we got to the festival this year. Athena, as you all know, is completely different because we are virtual, but it's also different because we decided to program it differently. And we decided to react and respond to the moment and to use that to fuel all of our programming. And so if I'm saying anything and either one of you want to jump in, feel free. So there were 8 program areas. And that means there were 8 shorts programs, but I think there were 10, right? 10
there
shorts.
Were 9 shorts.
9 shorts programs because we had 2 shorts programs in the discovery section.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And you hopefully have seen a lot of those shorts programs. And then what we also decided to do was to create conversations around those program areas that would touch on topics that were not necessarily in each film, but were in the topic in the program area. And so what we wanted to talk to you a little bit about is how we all got there. So I guess most people, when the pandemic hit, nobody knew what was going to happen, and that included the Athena Film Festival. And thanks to all of our supporters and sponsors and people that we work with, Barnard College, Umbrian Bhatti, Victoria Sword, Kristen Malloy, everyone who works with us, we were able to pull together a festival. And we started a bit later. So we put out our programming call when, like,
June 15th was when we officially opened public submissions. Yeah.
And that's about a month later, right?
Yeah. So we usually open submissions around mid-May.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Kory, I remember you, when we were talking about the submissions, you would say, we're getting a lot of films about this topic or that topic. Mm-hmm. So kind of talk a little bit about what you experienced in the first wave of submissions that we got, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we usually each year there's a bit of a trend, you see, because there's things that people want to be talking about and things that they want to be making films about. So this year, we were seeing a lot of that. We were also seeing a lot of films that were filmed in quarantine, or films that were being edited and wrapping up post-production after COVID had hit. And so we were seeing a lot of films that, were about healthcare and just health generally. Because, even before the pandemic, that was a huge, it's a huge topic, especially in the United States. And then we were also seeing a lot of films about, we were seeing a lot of films about just identity and representation, and especially in younger girls. And so that's sort of what led us to want to do the Come As You Are program. And, that's sort of what led to the Look at Health program. And, we wanted to make sure that whenever, and I feel like we do this most years, but especially this year when we wanted to be curating around themes, we wanted to make sure that we were letting the films and the submissions drive us rather than the other way around. Because we wanted to be hearing from the artists and hearing what they wanted to be talking about. So we got a lot of films about like, yeah, identity representation, a lot of films about like hair, a lot of films about like outward identity. And so we wanted to make sure that we did service to that.
Right. And I think that when we started programming, it was when George Floyd was murdered. And I think we were all kind of just trying to figure out like how do we find our place in this conversation too? And Faridah wasn't with us then. You came into the picture when, Faridah?
I came in like late 2020, like
right.
November, December.
Right.
Area.
Yeah. So we had programmed most of our shorts before them, and just people know in general, like we program our shorts first. And while there are program areas this year, I feel like we technically have always, we didn't show anything different than we would have. But we categorized it differently. And I actually think it really works. And I'd be interested to figure out for our future, if this is something when we want to continue doing certain program areas.
Yeah, because I mean, well, what I like doing about the program areas is I think it allowed us to focus, and I know Faridah will get to talk about this when we talk about the conversations, because we're able to bring it outside of the films and into our other programming as well, which I think is one of the things that Athena does really well. That's one of the things that I think makes us really special, is how we provide context and, continue the conversation beyond the screen. So what was really special to me about the program areas is that what's really special to me about Athena is that we are a leadership festival. So if we program it, it's leadership. So we get to change the definition of leadership with each film we program. So when we had the program areas, we got to sort of do that and bring something maybe new out of the short films that we put in those program areas. Because, I mean, for people who have watched the shorts, they know that a bunch of those films could have gone into a bunch of different, no film says only one thing, but we wanted to program with an eye to bring out something that we saw that was really special in the film, pairing it with other films that we thought would, create like a larger conversation. And that's what was so great to me about like the program areas and the shorts programs specifically.
Yeah. And giving it up to you and Opal for really thinking through films that could fit in multiple categories and figuring out which place we would want to see them so that we could create a kind of grouping that would work well together. And Faridah, you came to us, we'd already had these program areas and things like that. What was it like? I don't know if the other festivals that you work on that have program areas like what we did, and were you excited that, this is the direction Athena was going to go this year?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of program areas. I've always talked about how we need to redefine how we categorize film and how we look at film and what goals it served. The cool thing about a program area is it allows for different voices to be highlighted within a subject. I find that a lot of the way that we look at conversations is always based on solely the perspective, but not inherently what the perspective brings to the conversation. So it's one of the cool things about a program area is it's not, you're just looking at the American perspective. You can talk about many different people's perspectives on health, not just like, this is the US opinion on things. It's like, no, we need to learn how to look at issues and programs and conversations from multiple perspectives. And I like that having these program areas allows for that. So like, I found that very exciting. That was one of the things that I really enjoyed about working on Athena this year. Those program areas were dope.
And I think that, particularly the health area, because we've shown a movie about reproductive rights and abortion pretty much every year at Athena. I would be surprised if we miss a year, because that's just an issue that is, we care about. But this year we deliberately said, and while we have films like The Eighth, which focuses on fighting the ban on abortions in Ireland, we also really deliberately said we want to expand this conversation beyond reproductive rights and bring in issues related to women of color into this conversation, more about reproductive justice in things that we might not have done. And I think we really challenged ourselves to think outside the box that we see all the time. Anyone want to comment on that?
I mean, just speaking about the program areas in general, I found having that lens allows for you all to also to like kind of it structures the way that you look at a film, because you can go into a film with any kind of mindset. The good thing about a program area is, like, if you're in the Imagining a New Future program area, you look at a film that exists within that space, and you enjoy that film, you engage with that film, but you also start to think about building a new future, especially at this period of time when we're all trying to figure out what a new normal is. It's really nice to be able to like go into a film or come as you are, like looking at stories that kind of like essentially allow for you to see yourself or define it in that kind of way. Because like you can watch a movie and come out of it with any perspective that you want. It kind of gives a nice little framework, and you're allowed to engage with that framework or not engage with that framework. But it is nice to kind of exist within those. And of course we had our conversations, which kind of added.
Yeah. Can you elaborate? So you came to us, and one of the charges that you had when you joined with us was create some conversations in these program areas that, ask bigger questions. I mean, the conversations this year are stellar, everybody. If you have not watched them, they are on our YouTube page. Chris will be dropping that YouTube page in there. They're available across the globe, and they are free. But Faridah, talk a little bit about the thought process for you in these amazing conversations.
So like programming these conversations was so much fun. It allowed for me, so I do a lot of film festivals, but it allowed for me to kind of look at the ways in which women can be leaders in conversations that they've not been allowed to be leaders in. So often we have conversations that are inherently about unconscious bias and stuff of that nature, and that is very, very important. But we're often only allowed to have those conversations. We're often locked out of other conversations. So like one of the really great, exciting things about it was, how can we have the space to talk about issues that are affecting us, but we've never been allowed to be the ones giving our opinion on them.
Right.
So and then of course all the program areas were like absolutely like lots of fun to play around with, lots of fun to kind of think about the things to come up with. It was of course like looking at the reproductive, like the health section, and kind of thinking like, what else can we talk about in reproductive health? Right. What are the other issues that we need to address? Or like looking at the deconstructing. We had lots of conversations about dismantling white supremacy, and like what are ways that we can do that, both in film, which we did with Decolonizing Documentary, but also just in society with Deconstructing Whiteness. So it was lots of fun to kind of like have these moments where we looked at not just how we can be leaders, not just in film, but how those films can actually lead to us being leaders in all different aspects of our community. And that was a lot of fun. Putting together all those conversations were great. They're all amazing panelists. I really do encourage you to watch them all. I can tell you which one I really like. I like them all. They're all my babies. But like,
so we're going to just tell people that you will hear Duke, because this is his time of day when he speaks. So my apologies. But Kory, please continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say that one of my favorite things that came up in talking about the conversations was when we were talking about Faridah brought up wanting to talk about numeracy in the STEM program, being like, this has been a year where we are constantly being told like this percentage of people, are possibly infected, this percentage, you're just constantly looking at numbers, and it means, it's so vital to you to understand what those actually mean. And then also numbers are weaponized so much in our media. And one of the things that I thought was so wonderful is that instead of having, Faridah was just like, let's talk about numeracy, but let's just fill the panel with women, femmes, non-binary, non-men folk to see how they would tackle that issue, rather than, talking specifically about like how women show up in like mathematics or in biology or some specific field. I was really moved by the idea of just being like, let's get women, people of color, like into these conversations and just have the broader conversation. Because as Faridah said, like so often women, trans folks, non-binary folks, people of color are being like only brought in to talk about their identities.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just while I listen to you guys talking, it's like we are so lucky to be able to like do this work. You know, I forget sometimes, you go through every day thing. We're running a month-long festival, and then, you take a moment and you just kind of sit back. You're like, wow, like we get to program movies and we get to do these conversations, and they can have impact on people. And sometimes, you have to just take that moment and go, that's pretty cool. And so just taking that moment to be like, this is pretty cool. We are, super lucky to have this opportunity to share our visions of what we see with people. And, we're in our 11th festival, so we have a lot of people who come every year. And so, I think that they like what we have to say, but I think we really pushed ourselves this year. And,
I think so.
And, I wanted to ask kind of what we learned. I think we learned that, for me, I learned that we can speak to a moment, like we really wanted to lean in, and for lack of a better word, not my favorite word, to challenging ourselves. And on these topics, like we've talked about things that we've never talked about before. And I think hopefully our entire society is doing that, but also that we can use the things that we've learned and share those with other folks through our programming. Mm-hmm. What about either one of you? Did you have any thoughts on what you learned from this experience this year, programming?
I learned to challenge. Oh, sorry.
No.
I was just going to say I learned to challenge myself a little further, just like to make the ask. And one of the, I guess, really awesome things about planning these conversations is I was reaching out to people who were kind of low-key my heroes. Like I was reaching out to people that I've been like stalking on social media and like to like send messages to them and just be like, oh crap, they said yes. And now they're going to talk about it and like be a person that like is communicating it more. And this space it's been really awesome. Just because like sometimes you kind of get like locked into the space you are and the limits. You kind of put limits on who you are and the things you can do. And I think working particularly in this role has like allowed for me to kind of to be comfortable making the ask.
Mm-hmm.
And what, not good at.
And one of the things to share with people is like we also really felt strongly that we had to pay everyone who was giving their time.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was something that we hadn't done before, because most of our conversations were kind of post-screening Q&As, filmmakers were there. But this year, because it's been such a hardship on people, and also it's about respecting people's time, we paid everyone who participated in an event. Some people donated their money back to the festival, and we appreciate that. But it was something that I have been seeing in other festivals. I think hopefully we can set an example for other festivals that this is something you have to build into your budget, and we all feel really strongly about that.
Yeah, and shout out to Kristen. Oh, I was going to say shout out to Kristen Malloy, our operations manager, for doing all of the paperwork. Because, like, obviously, yes, we want to pay everybody who gives their time because it's the right thing to do. But, someone's got to do the paperwork. And Kristen has been doing such an incredible job. And also just, I honestly don't know how her organizational mind works, but I love it.
I found out it's time travel. Yes. So we talked about that yesterday. There's a future her, past her figures out what future her is going to need, and she organizes it. So she tells me I have to stop sharing her secrets, but that is a special way, special talent that she has.
Yeah, amazing.
Yes.
I was going to say that what I learned from this year's festival, I think, was I was worried, and I'm a writer as well, and so I was worried, like, as soon as COVID happened and everything changed, I was worried that everything that I had written before COVID was not relevant. And I remember being worried about programming because we wanted to be programming things that react and respond to this moment. And I was worried about how things would connect. And I think what I really learned this year is that, like, what people are saying in films like is absolutely it's not just about like one moment.
Mhm.
And in the way that the way you frame it, the way that you show it, you can really like things just resonate for much longer than my like anxious brain was telling me as we were starting to do things. And also, you know, and this is something I've been learning a lot this year, and, you know, just over the years of my life, like, you know, this stuff's not new. And people, so it was just about finding the people who were talking about these things before everybody was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was scary. I mean, and the great thing was that we could bring in voices of people from across the globe who couldn't be coming to Barnard, and people couldn't see the movies across the United States. And so the voices that we were able to bring in, like Gemma Desai from the UK, and people from all over the world, who shared their experiences with us, and makes it more resonant beyond just like our little piece of the world that we, you know, can occupy. Okay, so let's kind of move into, somebody wants to know if you have a favorite program area. How do you guys want to do that? I mean, we talked about this before. We didn't know if we wanted to really do that, but you can. I wrote them down on the sheet if you don't remember them by heart, because I can't remember anything.
Go Faridah.
I'm always, it's between, oh gosh, no. Okay,
I know, it's tough. It's tough.
This is how my brain works, by the way. It's just me going, yeah, I have an answer, and then my brain like reacting violently to me assuming I know anything.
Well, we could say we love them all.
Yeah, I will say though that a couple of my favorites, I think the A Look at Health program became really special for me, especially that Shorts program became really special for me. And then Opal did such an incredible Q&A with those filmmakers from that program area. And that's also on our YouTube page that you can check out. And it was like, I was the one who was supposed to be keeping time for it. And I was like, no, we're not stopping. We're going to keep talking because this is also great. And I need to hear all of these things. And so I really liked that one. And then also Come As You Are, you know, like as a queer folk, I was just like, yeah, I want all of these people to be able to be on screen and be able to talk about this. And it just, also that's like something, Come As You Are is something that I have really tried to like pick up in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really fun to be able to bring that like to the festival and to the work. Like if I have a, you know, in the before times, if I would have people over my house, like for a party or something, the dress code always would be like, Come As You Are, you know? And so it was fun to be able to bring that like to the festival.
Faridah, do you have anything that you wanted to share?
I mean, I really, it's hard to like, I really have a hard time choosing things. If you ask me, like, I start to lose things. They're like, what's your favorite movie? And I'm always just like, but I think one area that I really just like the ethos of is imagining a new future. I'm always inherently looking towards, I think the past and the present are constantly in conversation, but I'm like a giant science fiction dork. And I just love the idea of like kind of building a better future, like that we always have tomorrow to be better. And we always have the option of building a better tomorrow. So I love the concept of imagining a new future in general.
Yeah,
and a huge shout out to the conversation, the Creating Utopias, science fiction for future planning that Faridah put together. It's wonderful. I had the privilege to be able to watch it the other day, and it's incredible to see how these creators talk about the concept of utopia and the concept of world building.
And because we recorded most of them, part of what my job was to watch them all, make sure everything was okay. And I got to watch everything. And that is not, and I don't get to experience the festival in the way other people get to experience the festival, just because of my role. And just, I learned so much from all the experts. And I think for me, the dismantling white supremacy, the discussions in that area, You know, the doc conversation. What was the title of that? Decolonizing docs. And
that was such an amazing conversation.
Such a great conversation. I mean, all these conversations are things, I have to say, I'm going to toot our horn a little. You're not going to see at any other festival. And so this is the great thing about Athena, is that we are able to bring in these kinds of voices that, you know, don't happen in other places. Okay, so we're a couple more minutes, but we wanted to share a couple of things with you guys. Okay, so what is your favorite movie of the festival? So Kory, why don't you start us off?
So my favorite movie of the festival is My Name is Baghdad, which played in the Come As You Are section at the beginning of the month, and it's a coming of age story about a young skateboarder in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I remember when I watched this film, the thing I just wrote in my comments, like, yeah, I'm in. It was so good.
Yeah, I think so. I think I remember that.
Yeah, I was like young, like awesome young woman, like skateboarder, incredible soundtrack, like incredible filmmaking, like a really different kind of narrative structure. And then the Q&A we had with Caru de Souza was amazing. She is such an incredible filmmaker. And yeah, I feel like I will be studying that movie for years to come.
Yeah, we don't have like a lot of, you know, our curation is not like super sophisticated. It's kind of like what moves us. And we're always like, yeah, oh yeah, or kind of like, yeah. And we know, I mean, we've been doing this a while. We know what's kind of an Athena movie. And, there were some this year. I mean, particularly we talk about like our breakthrough movie, Unapologetic, and it's just like we've all watched that and we were like, Athena, and then we were like, breakthrough, because it just met the moment. And just, you know, shouting out to Ashley O'Shea for getting $25,000 breakthrough award. She's first or second time female director. It was her first film, who didn't yet have US distribution. And you know, I can't wait to see what she does next. And that's the whole point of the breakthrough, right? Which is giving people a little bit of money so that they can break through. And so Faridah, you were going to share a movie.
Yeah. So my actually fave is, I love them, but my fave was kind of a short film called Heading South. I'm always looking for, I watched so much even before I got into film, which is the reason I got into film festivals. And it's just so rare to see a story about Mongolia in general, but also like a woman's perspective from Mongolia, and it was just such a beautifully done film. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's just such a lovely story of like family and of language and of identity. And one of the things I really appreciate about a film like Heading South is it's an identity that we don't have much like content from, right, for lack of a better word, but it still feels like a universal story. And I think it kind of encapsulates why I'm in this business, which is that I think that there are so many ways that so many stories that seem small that are actually universal. And
right,
we should like endeavor to find those sort of stories so we can change the narrative.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it always completely baffles me when people talk about the small story, because that doesn't make any sense. Because when you have small stories, are just, first of all, I don't think there are small stories, and second of all, it's just specificity of someone's experience, and that specificity is always what leads to like deeper connection, I think, in a story.
And I think part of what we try to do is center people who aren't centered in our culture. And that is really important to us. And so for me, I was really moved by The Eighth. I watched it multiple times, and it makes me cry because it's hopeful, because we're dealing with so much reproductive rights issues here in this country. And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's a story of the fight to repeal the Eighth Amendment in Ireland, and it's intergenerational. It's like older, sophisticated organizer working with young women, working with people who had never organized before, and really just this amalgamation of people trying to take back their rights. And as a person who kind of cut her teeth in reproductive rights in the 90s, and for us here to always be moving backwards, to see a place moving forward, and then to see what's going on in Poland now, it's just like there's just a lot of momentum on this issue, and I think it just gave me hope. And so yeah, and what else did we want to talk about? Oh yes, we wanted to really talk about one important issue that we were super happy to be able to deal with here was increasing accessibility. And so if either one of you want to talk about that.
Go for it, Faridah.
I don't know. One of the things that it was also kind of a thing we learned, which is like a thing I learned was kind of like how we can make a festival more accessible. We had an accessibility conversation as well. So like definitely check that out. It was an amazing conversation. Thank you very much to Kristen and Maysoon and Catherine so much for sharing your stories and like kind of helping us. But essentially, like for me, it was really cool to just learn. I don't know, to be in that space. I learned through working at Athena what an audio description, how to do a proper audio description is.
Have you been really super at those? I have not done them in the right way.
But yes, so I've been doing audio descriptions and like looking into live captioning and all these really amazing things that I hope stick around, because I do think that there's been a push for it currently, but I'm hoping that this becomes a transition, because like I think one of the things that, I mean, as a person with intersectional identities, we all have biases. We all have things that we could do better. And my biases, the things that I could do better in the way that I occasionally engage in ableist behavior. So like this was a really good period of time for me to kind of just learn some of those and unlearn some of the things that I've normalized.
Right. I think for all of us, I think one of the things about the pandemic is really understanding more about what people with disabilities deal with. And for a lot of folks who said that they couldn't make accommodations for people to work from home in other places. And then we realized that they totally could have, but didn't want to. So these are kinds of things where we're like, okay, let's continue this so we can have more inclusion as part of all of our work. I feel like we are kind of set. Is there anything else either one of you want to share? Okay, so I want people to still, if you're a pass holder, sponsor and everything, please watch the shorts programs. They are on until the 31st, and they're just so fantastic, and we want to make sure you really see them. All of them are available until the end of the festival. And like March is long this year, from the 1st to the 31st. So, but it will cut you off at the end at 00 on April 1st. So please, watch it in advance. But we have another whole weekend here, another week. I think 6 days, right? And then we have a closing night party if any of you want to join us. We'd love to have you. And that will be on March 31st. And I'm sure you'll get an invitation. Faridah and Kory, it's really an honor to work with you both. So talented. I learned so much from you. It's just a joyful experience to work with you both. And, shouting out, of course, Opal again, and Kristen and everybody. It's truly an honor. And you guys want to say anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone on the team. So much work goes into a festival. I know I don't want to be one of those people, but like it really is a lot of work to put on a film festival.
Takes a village.
And everyone seems to be handling it with the extreme grace. And it's been just lovely working with everyone and just kind of like going through this kind of changing times. Thank you to everyone, and I feel very lucky to have worked with you.
Meditation helps keep the anxiety down.
Yeah, thank
Kory?
you. Well, yeah, I just want to echo what Faridah said. It's amazing to work with everybody, and I just want to say a special thank you to all of our filmmakers for doing the hard work to make these films, putting
Absolutely.
themselves out there. You know, I want artists to know how valued they really are. So special thank you to them.
We are, we were able to also pay our shorts program as shorts filmmakers this year, which we had never done before, and also the feature-length films. I mean, this was really an important kind of like line in the sand for us about respecting people and the work that they do, and valuing it, because of course people want to go to film festivals, they want the exposure and stuff like that, but it's also like, pay me. I put a lot of money into this, so whatever I'm worth, pay me. And so we would be nothing without the filmmakers who share their work with us and allow us to share it with our community. And yes, so please, great shout out. And thank you all for, being pass holders and being sponsors and for being a part of our community. Even though our community, we're not together in person, we feel like we're together online, and hopefully we'll be able to see you all in person next year. And we appreciate you. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye.
Bye.